Welcome back, everybody, to me complaining mildly about the Wheel of Time. And today I'm complaining about chapters 46 to 52, I think. Maybe 53. I'm kind of confused. The last one is called Need. I think that's 52, but I might be. However, of the Shadow Rising, and it's kind of mild complaining and shit. So we'll see how that goes, right? Let's do that. Cheers. All right. We are, all in all, once again, only with two groups today. Those being, and almost a third group. I don't want to call her a third group because it's, a big chapter. So we'll spend a lot of time with either Elaine and Nynaeve and people in Tanchico, or with Rand, although nothing much happens there, and then we have that one chapter that I guess we've all been waiting for. That is events at the White fucking Tower, and ain't those fun. Plot-wise, this is actually once again a solid part. And I mean, there's still an eighth of the book left, which I'll tackle tomorrow. But up to now, unless Robert Jordan goes and really fucks it up, which, he's capable of, this has, when it comes just to the plot and, stuff happening there, this has been the best of the lot so far. The structure and all of that, that works fairly well. I'm good with that. I'll just state that again because, I don't want to be that kind of person to withhold my praise where it is necessary. So there we go. How shall we go about this? Shall we start with... we'll start with the events at the White Tower because, there they are. We finally learned what Min saw, and that's, that's something. And what happens is the White Tower is not exactly attacked from without. The White Tower is subject to a coup. By which I mean, people with shaman headdresses march into the capital. No, what I mean is that Elida, because of course it is Elida, and there were some hints in the earlier Min chapters, right, that it's Elida, and then she hangs out with that one White Aja girl, lady, woman, whatever, that I can't remember the name of right now. Anyway, so that gang kind of organizes a coup and stills the Amerlin, whose name is Swan Sanchez, something like that, and Liana, her keeper of the records, whatever. Those two, and throw them into the dungeon, and it's up to Min to go and rescue them. There's a weird encounter with Gawain, whatever. Gawiner, and then they're gone. So that's the basic structure. But it's, all in all, as a story, it mostly works. It's not perfect, but it mostly works. And that's the first thing there. Now, let's look at the stuff that I think is kind of problematic there. So, all the stuff with, Swan and Elida it kind of works because we kind of know, because we have that one or two short paragraphs from Elida's perspective. We kind of know that she's doing this for the proper reasons, which are proper Aes Sedai reasons, which is, find the Dragon Reborn, get him under control, do all of that stuff. Don't fuck around the way Swan does all the time. Yeah. Now, if this is the kind of story that follows proper, rules and whatnot, because, that's what I expect it to be, what will happen is that Elida is actually the poor kind of person that takes over the place, and because she is too stiff-necked to go along with giving Rand his free head and whatnot, she'll probably run the entire organization further into the ground. That's sort of my guess, because of too much actually sticking to the rules kind of thing. That's my guess. But we will have to wait and find out in the future. So far, she just, they just still Swan and Liana, throw them in the dungeon, and that's it. And then we have the situation with Gawain taking over, or fighting some of the older warders to prevent a counter coup or whatever, and the White Tower and so forth. And yeah, then everyone leaving, or at least Swan, Liana, Min, and Logain leaving. So we'll see where they'll go. Nothing much really to see there, apart from because the way we get told these stories, we don't see the actual fighting. We only see the retrospective of those things and flashbacks and whatnot, which is fine. I don't mind. It's, once again, this is a solid chapter. It sets out to, it complements Min's arrival at the tower properly. We have all these prophecies that she makes come true, and that's fine. There's just one thing to look at there. Not two things. Okay, thing one. Min having the power of foresight and seeing those kind of things is a really clever device. In general, it's a cool narrative device. Having prophecies and whatnot is always fun. Having some that always come true is also fun. But on the other hand, it's basically sledgehammer foreshadowing. And it's fairly difficult, apparently, or at least for someone like Robert Jordan, it's very difficult to create any tension out of that. Because what you want to do, right, is to take those images and make them vague enough that we as the readers can sit there and try to guess and figure out what's going on. Because it's this one's gonna die, and they're oh shit, they're gonna die, and then you just let them die early on, just like he did with that one Tuathon woman back at the beginning of Dragon Reborn, right? Lacks, in the long run, lacks a lot of interest. It's basically, oh, by the way, sometime later this will show up, and you can sit around and try to figure out and guess what will happen or not. But then again, because we did not get any other stuff going on in the White Tower until that point, apart from these one or two short things with Elida talking to someone and sort of gathering her forces and whatnot, it was fairly clear that this will be an inside job, right? It was fairly clear that this will not be I don't know, hordes of Trollocs entering Tarvalon or the White Cloaks storming the tower, because that was never on the table, really. It's it had to be this way, so it was kind of not all of that, not that interesting at the end of the day. So that's the small complaint, I guess. The large one, there's another one that I almost forgot. So the large one, the really large one is the weird sort of almost lesbian tension between that mistress of the kitchen and Min that's not there, because obviously it's not there. We can't have homosexuality in anything like a fantasy book from the early 90s, but it's sort of there. It's how, is it Laras? I think that's her name. Her coming and always helping Min for all these things, because you remind me so much of me as a kid, and wow. It just gives up a really, really weird vibe in general. That's one thing that I find, odd, at least. And the other thing, of course, so yeah, that odd vibe of not really form of homosexuality or whatever is I don't know, weird. And then we have the thing with Min, who is, as we know, the only one with an actual working dress sense in the entire book, because he's yeah, I'll wear pants and a coat and a hat while my hair short, because fuck you. Yeah, and we see that she's getting more and more into actually wearing dresses for Rand. and that's sort of what I feared right at the beginning with that whole way it is built up with her sort of inner monologue of like, well, I can't wait to put on like proper pants again and like all of that. And because of her love to Rand, she becomes more and more the classic like female role model that we have in these books. And I'm kind of annoyed by that because what's so wrong with having like Min just be herself? And not deal like, well, maybe I look pretty in a dress if, Rand wants that. I don't know. It just annoys me on some level that's sort of how this goes. Like, there is true love, and she can't help it because it's obviously fucking destiny because of fucking Tarbeer. And then she also has to wear dresses and use makeup and stuff. Like, anyway, I mean, she's out of the tower now, so maybe she'll actually get a chance to put on pants again, which are definitely more, useful while riding horses, which is, oh, no, right, they want to get on a boat, I guess. So, another good reason for Robert Jordan, for Bobby J to keep Min in a dress. And in a proper, female attire, I guess. Which, once again, yeah, fuck that. It's not necessary. Yeah. So we'll see where that is going. Right now, it kind of annoys me. It's sort of that plot, like that subplot. It's not really a plot, but it was like sort of through all those like short bits of Min in the White Tower that we got in this book. There was always at least one point where she thought about like how she wanted to go back to wearing her favorite kind of clothes. And then also always like, but maybe dresses are nice because of Rand. It was always in there, and that's kind of the annoying bit. Yeah. But then again, at least she's still wearing proper clothes and not just like undressing herself in dreams all the time, because... yeah. But we'll get back to that later on. So that's all about the tower. So my annoyance with some bits of the tower and all of that. We'll see where all of that is going in the future. I mean, yeah, I guess we'll find out in the next book, because I don't think there will be much more tower stuff going on here. Obviously, Logain still has a future full of glory and other stuff. So we'll see how that will work. Well, I guess we'll find out. So let's look at the other two bits in this book. Let's go with Rand. Rand's part is fairly boring. Yes, it is. So there's like... So, Rand's part is mostly riding down to Siege Tabor. Oh no, it's Cold Rock's Hold. Cold Rock's Hold. Yeah, to that place. And then from there going further to whatever. So we get a lot of like travel stuff, we get interactions, suitably odd and crude interactions with Avienda, a bit of like how dark and brutal the land is with all those poisonous snakes and lizards and whatnot, and then we arrive at the Hold, and we have a bit more like customs of the Aiel, and then we have that end with another like dream situation where Robert Jordan gets the chance to write about naked chicks. I mean, yeah, why not? But yeah, that's sort of what we get there. And then obviously there's another attack. Rand decides now it's the time to actually move on immediately. Plus, we obviously reach the point where he is, of course, falling in love. Not he's falling in love, like Avienda is, of course, falling in love with him. It takes some time, but it kind of works. So we'll see how that goes in the near future. So let's look at some of the details there and what we can draw from this that is interesting, what we can, just throw aside. So here's the interesting bit. That entire chapter... Alright, I already forgot the name of the chapter, right? Because it's not that important. Oh, an offer. It's called an offer refused or something like that. That entire chapter could have been dropped. There's nothing in that chapter that is that is worth an entire chapter of, like, I don't know, 50, 20, 30 pages. The only important information we get out of that is the peddler, I already forgot his name, Kadir, is trying to get close to Rand to get something out of him. The Gleeman is also, trying to get his story, but it's just Gleeman-y things. The other one may know something and is trying to sell it in exchange for some form of amnesty, I guess. It's never quite clear because Rand never gets into it because he's an idiot. He doesn't even try to find out. So yeah, but that's basically the bit that we get there. That's the only really important information out of that chapter. So it could have been dropped completely. Just mentioned in like one or two sentences before we come to Cold Rock's Hold. And have the events there, or even put it in there if there is something like that, or possibly in the next chapter when they move. Like, it doesn't need an entire chapter full of travel montage to just like get that one bit of information across. So there's certainly part of like the page bloat there. We'll talk about why I think it's bloat and nothing more, but that's so. And then we come into, I always want to say Siege Tabor, but it's not. It's obviously, Cold Rock's Hold. So we get in there, we get a depiction of how that place looks, which is pretty cool. It's like sort of this open, like, crack in the hills, and there's all these terraces with all these houses, and then we get like a lot of depiction of all kinds of fruits and stuff that include tomatoes, apparently. And... yeah. See, here's the thing. There will be more on that when I kind of draw it all together. But what I realized today is like a bit more like why people might think that cultures and world building are so good in Wheel of Time, which they are not. But what we have here is that at some points in his story, when he has time or nothing else to do or whatever, Robert Jordan likes to go and describe a specific thing in very graphic detail. It's obviously nothing sexual when I said graphic, because that's usually called cuddling, and then we're done. No, it's like the visuals of specific places are something that he tends to go into. We have a lot of description on that place. I do kind of like the idea that Rand is interested in some of those fruits because he's a farmer. I get that. That's a nice bit. It still takes up a lot of time. The same when he describes the house and all the rugs in there. It's like... I mean, that's sort of the part where you call it like tell don't show, because we get like a huge depiction of just like nothing really important. It would have been basically described with, the floors are covered with rugs from all the different carpets from all the different places the Aiel have raided before. Done. It doesn't need to be that elaborate. But it does that a lot. You can, under a bad light, you can call that like really cool cultures. At the end of the day, it's not, but that's sort of what we get here. And we see more of that, like in that entire chapter. It is elaborate when it comes to details. One could say there's way more details than you need, but, they're there. The same with some of the other stuff of that culture of the Aiel. Like, right, the Aiel are important. So we get a lot of this, like, Shade of My Heart stuff, and there are apparently, like, important rituals to, or rites or whatever, when you want to enter a hold, siege, whatever, when you enter those, to be guest greeted and all of that. There's elaborate customs there. Now, there's two things to that. One of them is like, why do only sort of barbaric cultures have elaborate rites in these kind of fantasy depictions? I don't know, but it's sort of, I guess, the idea of exoticism that you have in there. But it's, yeah. It's the Aiel and it's the hippie Aiel, also known as the Tuathon, that have elaborate greeting formulae and stuff. Whereas when you go to civilized countries, like, Camelin, Tarvalin, Tyr, whatever, it's just like, oi, yeah, well, there's like no greeting formula. It's like, "Oi, mate, how are you?" and then you're done. That's how it works in all those cities. But as soon as you meet those wild ones out there, the hippie Aiel, the real Aiel, possibly other groups like the sea folk, I guess. Suddenly you have all these complicated formulae, which I think is exactly that problem, right? That we as mostly Western, whatever, Western dominant, imperial, whatever, culture, society, and so forth. When we wrote about these kind of things, we always tried to, it goes in that whole like noble savage like cliche stereotype, whereas you want to convey exoticism in a lot of ways. You build up these like weird, sort of elaborate rituals when you depict them to make sure that you understand, everyone understands that there's like this ancient tradition, and it's sort of this, that kind of thing that is at play there with the Aiel in a way where that is not with anyone else. Yes, every other culture also has their kind of like customs and stuff, and we get like at least some mentions from time to time. But it's only those that are supposed to be exotic. Well, we get these weird like greeting formulas and all that stuff. So yeah, that's something that I find a bit of an, just it's something that I realize. It's not, Robert Jordan is certainly not the only one who does stuff like that. It's the same with, your George R. R. Martin, his like favorite favorite horse lord, what's his name, Khal Drogo, or like Moon of My Heart, more like people from like non-civilized groups in these kind of places always use odd language full of images and formula. That's just like how this is or has been done for a long time in a lot of like fantasy, probably also like other, like, I guess you read some older terrible Western novels, it's the same kind of thing when they're talking about Native Americans, and I assume there's more stuff like that out there all over the place. But it has unfortunately made its way into fantasy and has stayed with fantasy for a long time. It's still fairly prevalent, I think. So yeah, there's that problem. The other thing, obviously, is just a quick guess. So Milane, or whatever her name is Avienda's mother, right? I'm just guessing, but I think that's sort of what will happen. Anyway, point is, Avienda is the next one in Rand's harem or whatever. I assume she's the third one that Min saw right at the beginning in that chapter in Berlon. It was Min, Elaine, and Avienda, and all three obviously have no choice whatsoever because, Taviran, I guess. Whatever. So I'll just leave that there as a guess. And the way it kind of is built up is... it's just crude. Like, I don't even necessarily dislike the whole, like, idea, the plot arc. I'm fine with all of that. But it's just done so crudely. The same way as, like, writing her dialogues and saying... Yeah, probably or possibly because of that idea of weird exoticism. That's sort of what I will blame here for making this one so much more painful than the ones of Min and Elaine, which are still painful in a lot of ways, but, not that painful. Apart from that, yes, I mean... Lanfear shows up, is naked. Everyone else is apparently also naked, apart from Avienda, which is at least something. In Rand's dreams, on the other hand, the boy is like 19, has never gotten laid because all they get is cuddling and maybe kissing games sometimes. I don't blame him for having horny dreams. It's understandable, I guess. Um, and then, yeah, well, I mean, fight scenes are fight scenes. It's all fun and games. We'll see where all of that is going in the next couple of chapters. But all in all, the whole trip to there, Cold Rock's Hold and Traps, those 3 chapters, Offer Refused, or whatever it was called, Cold Rock's Hold, and Traps is a chapter name, yeah. Those 3 could have been one chapter with like any form of editing added to it, and it would not, we wouldn't have lost anything really. All right, let's look at the girls. That part is actually fun. And I'll say this, like, there's terrible shit going down there that I really, really find annoying. But apart from that, the plot, once again, is solid. The whole bit of, how they meet with Igyan, whatever her name is, the Shanchan woman, how they meet, become friends, sort of friends, I guess, and all of that. That was like well done, competently handled, is how I would call it. That was well done. I'm good with that. Even the dream bit later on is mostly solid, right? Nynaeve going into the dream, learning about how to figure out what is wrong with Rand, or not what with how finding ways to get to finding out what is wrong with Rand, and coming out of that. That is, all in all, a solid plot. I'm fine with most of that, plot-wise. But the same problems persist, so I'll just mention them. That ridiculous, dumbass gender competition between, yes, Nynaeve and Elaine obviously know what's best for everyone and try to outdo the men all the time. That kind of, it just is annoying at this point. It doesn't do anything for the story. It doesn't do anything. It's just like annoying at this point. And irrational as fuck, because there is no reason beyond the, oh, men are so silly sometimes bullshit going on. It's like, yeah, you could make something out of the idea that those like 3 dudes, Bail Doman, what's his name? I always keep forgetting the name of the thief taker, thief catcher, and obviously Tom have like this like super like macho protective streak in them. I'm fine with, like, if you want to make an argument out of that. But when you look at how those 2 ladies behave, yeah, that's the wrong way to go about it, unfortunately. So yeah, there's that. Then there's already some of the uncomfortable, like, Robert Jordan really likes to tie up naked women in his stories, apparently. It's just something that he's really into. And the scene with I always want to call her Amalthea, but it's a different name, something close to that, the Penarch, and the one Black Ajale, Aes Sedai. That was just gratuitous. There was no reason whatsoever for that scene. I mean, apart from, like, yeah, it showed that she's a prisoner, but there would have been other ways to show that, apart from having her tied up tied up to a post and being tortured for fun, gamed with by someone else. Like, that's I guess where the whole repression thing comes from. I mean, obviously also like the spanking, where everyone has to be, switched, spanked, or whatever all the time, but whatever. That scene was unnecessary. The whole introducing another, I want to say Taken, but of course I don't mean Taken, I mean Forsaken. It's just like the Taken are cooler. You heard it first here, like the Taken are so much cooler. And back to it, like Mogadin, whatever. That one showing up, getting all the information, and then wandering off. Yeah, why not? I don't see where it is going, apart from introducing another Forsaken right now, to make things a bit more complicated, but I guess that's all that was in there. Plus having another situation where 2 women are, like, forced to do stuff and made as, subservient as possible, submissive as possible. Maybe that's just the entire point of that like scene. Who knows? We get a bit more information on Brigitta. That one is actually cool. The idea that those heroes are basically these archetypes that are in like the dream world, and sometimes get like can manifest or get reborn to reenact the same kind of thing. That's a cool idea. I don't believe he's going to go anywhere like actually interesting with it, apart from like, yeah, that's how it is, and this is the literal one. They're just like, they live in dreams and then they get like cast out into the real world and then they get kicked back into dreams. But it's, it's solid. Obviously also two final things, and I'm done with it. Yes, of course, it's manacles and a collar for Rand that they're going to use, because the imagery is obviously important there, which is kind of flat, but whatever. We're used to that kind of stuff by now. And a final thing, and I'm definitely going to go and do something more with that. It's not only a Wheel of Time issue. It is definitely more pronounced in Wheel of Time, however. And that is insta love and monogamous love. It's like, yeah, that scene when the three women walk out of the room, like Elaine and Nynaeve walk out of the room, which also obviously had like one woman tied up naked, because of course we need that stuff, and find the men out there because of the attack of the guy who is that Seeker, is that the right name? The Raven dude from the like not 2 chapters, but a couple chapters ago, of course. And of course everyone is like blushing because they have their 90s on there. I'm like, there's a bunch of people out there that have certainly seen naked women before. All they do is like blush all the time, because everyone finds someone that are like, either there's some connection or whatever, and yes, Ygyanin has to find Bail Doman super attractive, because of course she does. So yeah, all right, one final thing before we leave it for tonight. There is that like situation with dumb cultural jokes that I need to talk about, because it's dumb. There's a scene when they start eating, right? They're in Tanshiko, which is part of Tarabon, and they are at war with Aridoman or whatever, and we get a dumb chopstick joke, and an extended chopstick joke that is completely unnecessary. Yeah, they're trying to eat this foreign food with what boils down to chopsticks, and in case we don't get that, they are called suishi, for whatever reason, right? They're using the chopsticks, and they're obviously failing at using the chopsticks, so we get like a way too long scene on like how everyone is trying to use chopsticks, and yeah. I mean, I kind of see that this is once again one of those, like, we were way more like easygoing with like sort of xenophobic jokes and stuff, or like making jokes about different cultures and whatnot, and having a bit of a laugh at that. And this is like still like 1993 or 94, but it is kind of annoying, and it's unnecessary, like to a high degree, to have that bit in there at all. Yes, they're sitting there and they're eating because they have become friends. So why do we need like 2 pages of everyone trying and then failing to use chopsticks, and then going back to using not normal for their culture, normal things like spoons and forks, and then we're done? It's like, yeah. So Bobby J could tell us that he doesn't like chopsticks? That it? Probably. So yeah, there we are. That's the lesson learned from today. Chopsticks suck, and Bobby J is into having naked women tied up. Apart from that, solid plot, solid story. We're done for tonight. I'll talk to you tomorrow about the rest of the Shadow Rising, which is, despite all the annoying shit, still the best one of the lot so far. I make no predictions for the future, is what I'm saying here. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.